I know if you've been watching In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics for a period of time. And by the way, we're coming to you from our studios that they provide for us, which are second to none. I mean, it is an extraordinary place to work. First Star Logistics gets it done. They take care of their people. If, in fact, you've been watching our podcast for a while, you know that we have a gentleman that we really admire and respect. His knowledge of the game of football, played it at an extremely high level, coached it at an extremely high level, has broadcasted it in all platforms at an extremely high level. And I'm talking about the multi-talented and very successful Solomon Wilcots. And Solly, you've done it all, man, in the game of football. We appreciate your thoughts and your opinions on everything with respect to the game, my man.
Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on again.
So give us you do an extraordinary podcast, an award-winning, phenomenal podcast. Tell viewers and listeners how they can take advantage of your talents in that regard, sir.
Yeah, you can catch us on Believe in Bengals podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, also on YouTube, Apple, and on Spotify. You can also catch us on the opening drive on Sirius XM NFL Radio, Monday through Friday. You can catch us in the morning from 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. Right now, during the offseason, we're on from 8 to 11. But once we start training camp, we'll be back in our normal time slot from 7 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. Sirius XM NFL Radio, Channel 88. It's the opening drive, and we cover the entire football league, everything that is NFL.
And it's a great listen, man. It really is. Whether you're in your car driving to one, from point A to point B destination-wise, or you just want to listen. I mean, it's an education. You get an education every time you flip it on and listen. You guys do an incredible job, Saul. You really do.
Appreciate it. I love hanging out with Bill Polian.
Yeah.
Here's the general manager, 6-time Executive of the Year award winner. And so we get to have guys like him on as my co-host. And we love to think that we're telling people things about the game that they wish they had known or should know, but they don't get to see it all every single day. And we try to take them behind the scenes and enlighten them a little bit about the game.
No question about it, Solly. So let's talk about, you look at the game as a, former player. You did coach now as a broadcast. You look at the game, though, through a set of eyes that are extremely experienced, having played it at a very high level, like I said, coached it. But even as a player, you were basically the leader of the SWAT team, and you got everybody lined up properly. You recognized what they were doing, how they were doing it, what you were going to do to counteract and combat it, and you got guys lined up accordingly. And you were like a coach on the football field. So you always had an extremely high IQ for the game of football. Where'd that come from, Solly? How did that come about?
Well, I think it comes from just appreciating the history of the game, learning the game. Before I got to the NFL, as a kid, all I did was read about football. I read about all the coaches. I knew about Paul Brown before I was even drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals. If you would ask most of my college buddies, who's Paul Brown, they couldn't have told you.
Right.
I was the nerd in the room. They're like, oh, Paul, I could tell you, where he started, Miami of Ohio, then at Ohio State, then he coached in the military. And then he was so good, they were starting a team in Cleveland. They wanted him to, basically the Cleveland Rams left to go to Los Angeles.
Yep.
So they were starting a new Cleveland team. And well, you want Paul Brown. You're going to get a coach to coach a team in Ohio. It was going to be Paul Brown. And those teams early won all the championships. I mean, they won like 6 or 7 championships in a row. There's never been an expansion team that was so successful in the history of our sport than those teams coached by Paul Brown. So I had known about him. I had gotten to know Sid Gilman, who turned out was a very close friend of Paul Brown.
Yeah.
And I was in high school. So he was in San Diego, California. I went to high school. I grew up in Los Angeles, went to high school in Riverside, California, and got to be in a couple of camps that Sid Gilman was running and coaching in. And I got to know him. He took a liking to me. And so I paid attention. He would have the tape on, rolling tape. and I, be asking all these questions,
Right.
So it was just, I had the opportunity to learn a lot about the game. And I realized how fortunate I was growing up in Southern California. As you well know, high school teams, some of the college teams, a lot of these coaches, Sid Gilman, Don Coryell, John Madden, obviously Al Davis. It goes on. Joe Gibbs, remember, with the Redskins.
Sure.
All of these coaches, Ernie Zampese, they all came out of California. They were throwing the ball when everyone else was running the wishbone. Everybody, the whole state of Texas was running the option, right? All of the Southwest Conference was a run conference. The quarterbacks did not throw it. They ran it.
Yep.
And I'm talking even going into the 80s, right? All the way through the 1980s. In the state of California, that gave us John Elway. That gave us all these quarterbacks who could sling it. They were throwing the ball. I will say this, there's a little corner of Northwest Pennsylvania. They were throwing it too, right?
Yeah.
Guys like Dan Marino and Joe Montana and Jim Kelly, they all came out of that pocket of Pennsylvania. But just knowing those things, like some high school kids not supposed to know all of that about the history of the game. Somehow I learned all of that. I appreciated the way the game was played, the way it was coached. I never thought I would be a coach, but I remember when I was offered an opportunity to coach, and I did do some coaching.
Yep.
But when I was offered an opportunity to coach in the NFL, I was starting my television career, and I was also starting a family. So, I didn't see myself giving up time with my wife and kids, being in a dark room watching tape.
Yeah.
Every morning. You know how the coaches are. They're in the building well before the players arrive, hours after they leave.
Yep.
So I made the decision to kind of go into broadcasting more than into coaching. I do miss it. I do love the coaching part of it, but hey, I don't have any regrets, to be honest with you, Dave. I really don't.
No, I agree with you 100,000% all in. I was the same type of scenario. When I got done playing, I was given the opportunity for coaching assignments, coaching opportunities, and even in the NFL as with the Bengals. And I thought, yeah, same thing. It's like, man, I got a young family. I don't know. I know the work that these guys put in, the time that they put in, the hours they put in, 78-hour work weeks. It's like, man, no time for your family, and it's like, that's a big sacrifice. And I guess I just wasn't quite willing to make that sacrifice. But I feel like that I do kind of, I guess not having coached, but having been around great coaches, I know how they kind of approached the game, broke the game down, and all that
That's
sort of
right.
thing. I try to do that type of thing, getting ready and preparing for games. Do you think that you see the game through the eyes of a coaching type, mindset and brain at this point?
Yeah, I think there's multiple perspectives, but going back to the coaching thing, the real final decision was the precarious nature of the job and uncertainty, right?
Yep.
I felt like, look, I've been around players. I was a player. There are some players who refuse to listen to coaches. There's some players that think they've got all the answers. And after they blow assignments, after they give up touchdowns, then they're like, oh, okay. Well, you and I both know coaches get fired.
Yeah.
And I think the perfect example is Lou Anarumo, who I admire as a coach, right? And look, no coach is perfect. I'm not saying any coach is. But if players don't execute, and that's what they don't execute, you could teach them all you want. If they don't execute, you and your family are going to have to pack up and move.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. So I was like, do I want to put my life, my livelihood in the hands of young players and have to trust them to listen and execute? And if they don't, me and my family are going to be packing up and moving. And how many times am I going to have to pack up and move?
Yes, sir.
In my lifetime, I was like, oh, no, not doing it. So I respect coaches, but it's the precarious nature of you could do a great job and still get fired.
Yeah.
And so I was like, no, I'd like to have my fate in my own hands. It's like, I don't want to put my career, my fate in the hands of kids, young people who are 21, 23, 24 years old. If you have a Joe Burrow as your quarterback, I'm trusting that.
Yeah.
But those, they don't come around that often,
Exactly.
So here's how I look at it, though, because when I was doing my broadcasting, I would spend a lot of time in the buildings. Back then, they would give you the run of the place. Now they barely let you in the building as a broadcaster, right?
Right.
But back then, you could go into the NFL building. You could go walk down and talk with the coach. You could go in and talk to the coordinators. I would go in and talk to Ozzie Newsome, who was the general manager who I had played against when he was in Cleveland. Now he's the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens. And I could go knock on his door, and I had sort of tracked Ozzie's draft. I just thought he was phenomenal. This was a guy that hit on a high ratio in his drafting. And so I would just quietly go down and I'd say, hey, Ozzie, can I ask you a couple of questions? Yes, and I'd start picking his brain about what he looked at. Like when you go to a practice at a college campus, what are some of the things that you looked at? Like, how do you get a Jonathan Ogden and a Ray Lewis all in one draft? You got 2 Hall of Famers in one draft.
Incredible.
I would talk to Dick Haley. Like if I ran into Ron Wolf, general manager of the Green Bay Packers, look, they would be like wanting me to come to their office because I asked so many questions.
Yeah.
They were like, I like this young man. He's not just making it up on television.
Right.
This kid's he's curious enough. There are a lot of teachers in our sport that if you're curious enough to ask questions, they want to share the knowledge.
Sure.
As long as you respect the process, as long as you respect the work that they've put in, they're willing to share that. And Ozzie Newsome was that way. Bill Belichick was that way. And he doesn't share shop secrets very easily.
Right.
But he got the sense that, I had some knowledge. I brought things to the table. I think he loved that I played for Dick LeBeau because he wanted to know a lot about Coach LeBeau. And so we shared information. So when I would call games, or even now as a broadcaster, I look at the game from the owner's perspective, administratively, as the club would see it. I try to look at it as the general manager and the scouting department would see it, as player evaluators and what's expected there and what all goes into that. And then I look at it from the coaching perspective because that's about player development, right?
Right.
And then I look at it from a player's perspective, right? So I think there's multiple ways to get a full snapshot of what team building is, about what's required to win, about leadership components at different levels, right? Whether it's management, whether it's coaching, whether players, all three need leadership. I think ownership needs good leadership. We've seen what it looks like when owners are really bad at their jobs.
Right.
I mean, we've seen, since I've been covering the sport, I've seen owners get fired. I've seen Jerry Richardson of the Carolina Panthers. They had to take the team away from him.
Yeah.
I seen Daniel Snyder run what was a proud franchise into the ground.
Right.
And because of his mismanagement, even other owners didn't want to be part of the same group that he was part of. And he had to sell the team, right? So I've been able to see a lot of things over the arc of my career. I've seen it done well at every single level: ownership, general managers and scouting department, coaching, playing. I've seen it done well at every level, and I've seen it done horribly at every level. And because we now have the data analytics, we now have tape, we have access to all the information that they have access to. So I like to believe that, and I don't just make up my mind. I talk with other members of the media. I talk to other owners. I have a picture behind me on my shoulder. That's me and Bob Kraft. I've been to dinner. He's been great to me. We've been to dinner. I'm able to ask questions that you can't ask of anyone but an NFL owner.
Right.
And I've had the same conversations with Mike Brown. Mike has been great at sharing information. I'm not trying to act like it's so proprietary, but they don't volunteer information.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, You're not,
Right.
they're not going to, they're not going to just volunteer this information. But so I've been very fortunate in my time covering the league where I've had access to even Roger Goodell and get to ask him questions. But it all comes from a good place. It comes from a place of wanting to promote our league, wanting to promote the leadership in those positions, and to help the younger generation to understand what our sport is about and why our league is so great. And if you really understand what corporate America is like and understand what our league is like, I think our league is run so well. Not that we're perfect in everything. I think corporate America, and I speak at a lot of these events, corporate America can learn a lot from what we do in our sport and what we do in our game and how we build leaders and how we compete without undermining each other. We learn how to compete but we don't have to play dirty pool in order to win. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Like I've worked in corporate America, but trust me, I've seen it. There are certain people who think tripping up the competition is being competitive.
Right.
And I have to let them know that's not being competitive. Right. That's not how you compete. If competing was tripping somebody else up in the Olympics, they throw you out for that. Am I right? Right. That's not how you compete. You'd be surprised how many people think competing is doing anything to win. That's not what competition teaches us. You and I both know that. In our sport, you win by doing things the right way. Right. Because that's sustainable. And that's what's ultimately profitable. And that's not building a house on straw, right? That's building a house on good foundation. That's how we like to see it.
Absolutely. And that analogy, that last comment is a great way to segue into the fact that, man, as a player, you had to prepare and get your body and your mind right to play at a high level. We're going to get into the coaching part of it the same way. Same for a broadcaster. You have to get you mentioned, get your mind right, and it's a high level, the highest level of preparation and study. And using every resource available to you, like you talked about. Got a tremendous amount of respect for you, Solly, the way you handle it, because you take nothing for granted. Every single week is a new week. Every matchup's a new matchup. They're individually and collectively in a team and all that goes along with it. And there's a lot that goes into getting ready for a football game at all levels, like you talked about. Figuring it out or taking a look at it through the player's eyes, the coach's eyes, the management's eyes, the owner's eyes. I mean, that's a lot. But you do it well. I mean, you have a methodology to your preparation, and it's vast, and you have a lot of resources that you can tap into. But man, you get ready for a football game as well or better than anybody that I know. Solly, take us through what a week looks like for you as you're getting ready to do a National Football League game. What's the process like?
Yeah, that process begins Sunday night after those games have been played. So
right.
And I'm right then and immediately I'm starting to look at the tape. I want to know how the game unfolded in its chronological order. Okay, what happened? What were critical moments in games that led to either a win or defeat? Sometimes, games can turn on an injury, right? A player gets knocked out and now the team it can't be effective or efficient. Sometimes a player get knocked out and the other guy comes in and that team catches fire. And it was like, whoa, they should put this guy in sooner, right? Yeah. I mean, I've seen games won in every way, shape, or form, in every way imaginable.
Yep.
Some of the most unsung moments, unsung players end up being the critical reason why teams. So you need to know why a team wins and why they lose. I think diagnosing that, because sometimes it's not that they have lack of talent. Sometimes it could be penalties. It's lack of discipline, right? Sometimes it's their strategy was poor. And that's rare because these coaches are so good that usually it comes down to just the fact that the players didn't execute. That's right. Okay. Right. At the end of the day, that's more the common theme.
Right.
But getting my arms around that, and then I'm going to go through the data to try to quantify how efficient they were in critical areas of the game. You'd be surprised. Most critical moments in games will occur third down plays or critical moments in games, right? You're either going to be forced to punt it. That's why more teams started going for it on fourth down, because they found that we get 2 shots at it.
Yeah.
Third down used to be if you either made it or you were going to have to punt.
Yeah.
Now teams are like, let's go for it on fourth down. Let's get 4 tries to get the line to gain as opposed to 3. And that changed the way teams are operating. The Baltimore Ravens go for it as much as any team now on fourth down. So does the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that has won a Super Bowl and gone to 2 Super Bowls in the last 4 years. So teams are starting to borrow from these successful teams, are starting to do that. How good are you operating inside the red zone? You got to be able to translate those possessions into points, right?
Sure.
And then turnovers, your ability to protect the ball on offense and take it away on defense. And then how well do you operate in the final 2 minutes of the first half and the final 2 minutes of the game? Games are won and lost. You could go and just look at the data there, and I'm telling you, you're going to find the really successful teams are operating in those moments at a very high level. The bad teams are not operating. And you know what the number one data point for deciding wins and losses? It's very easy, but I'll give it to you. How many points did you score? How many points did you give up? Right? And that's never changed. That's never never changed.
Yep.
So that just goes to show you. But no, we take into a lot of those things. I like to go back again and then watch the tape differently, because I'll watch those plays in those areas, because now I'm starting to project and look ahead. They're not just how they played last week, but how they're going to plan to win this upcoming game, because that's the game I'm going to be calling. So you can only take so much away from their last game. I try to get a look at their last 3 or 4 games to see how they're trending, right?
Mm-hmm.
Either upward or downward. They're trending one way or the other. You and I both know no team stays the same throughout the course of the season. They're either swinging up or they're swinging down. Going into a game, we like to get a good feel for that. And then as I get there on Friday and Saturday, I'm meeting with the coaches. I'm meeting with the players. At that point, it's more about the psychology of the team. How's the quarterback feeling about the operations around him?
Yeah.
Right. He's the guy, he's pulling the trigger. So he's got, what's the division of labor? You got to matriculate the ball down the field. You're going to run it and you're going to pass it. Who are the players that are helping to do that? How are you distributing the ball? Who are the guys who are getting it? It's going to be Jamar Chase. It's going to be T. Higgins. It's going to be Chase Brown, right?
Right.
And then you and I both know those are the guys. And then you may have some ancillary secondary guys who are going to factor in critical moments. And so I'm talking to the coach, talking to the coordinators on both sides of the ball to try to figure out, here are the key guys, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like a big puzzle. As I get closer to game day, it all comes together. And here's the one thing you love about NFL. You don't know what's going to happen on game day.
No doubt.
You have no clue.
None.
But guess what? As an analyst, you better be prepared for everything. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Because this game could go in a number of different directions. But how about if it were to go in a direction that you're not prepared for? That's when you fail as an announcer. So it's kind of like riding a bucking bronco. You can't fall off. You cannot fall off. And it's going to be a rough ride. Sometimes I've come into games where it's so boring. Nothing's happening. Ineptitude on both sides. Offense, neither by fourth quarter, the game breaks out and it gets good, right? Like, where was these guys, right? Sometimes you come out and it starts right from the beginning. Both teams are clicking, right? And you're like, I couldn't even wrote a script this well, right? Sure. That's when things go as well as you kind of hope they would. But I've seen it go in so many different directions. You just have to really be so thoroughly prepared that you can stay on that bucking bronco no matter what happens. That it's going to be an interesting ride. The unexpected, you got to expect the unexpected, but be prepared to go down that avenue. And to talk about it's really about the players. It's about the coaches. I'll end it on this, Dave, because there's one thing that annoys me I don't like watching games with a lot of other people. Let me just say it. I don't go to stadiums to watch games. I like to stay at home, watch games by myself. All right, in my office, because I'm doing work usually when I'm watching. And here's why. Almost invariably, somebody will say, "Oh, that was a dumb play call." Like, people criticize coaches, and I can tell you right now, they have more information than you will ever have. They have worked all week on a play. They have looked at the opposing defense and say, here's what they do, here's the alignment, here's the player that we know we can attack.
Yeah.
They know. So they've put so much effort, so much knowledge. They're not pulling plays out of a hat. And there's a lot of things that go into it. And you and I both know quarterbacks get to change a play at the line of scrimmage.
Absolutely.
How do you know that the play that the coach sent in is the play that they ran? In fact, you don't know that. You don't know that Joe Burrow may have checked out of it. He audibled out of it into another play that didn't work. But people are saying, "Oh, that was a dumb play by the coach." Listen, fans, you don't know how to call plays. Let's just admit to that. That's just like Zach Taylor showing up at your job, telling you this is how you do your job.
Right.
He wouldn't even try to do it, right? So don't show up and tell Zach Taylor how to do his job when he has done it. They scored 30 or more points in almost half their games last year.
Yeah.
The guy is a great play caller. He's not an okay play caller. He's a really good play caller. I'm just here to tell you.
Yeah.
And I've seen him do things. I've seen him match wits with Andy Reid in these games and come out on the other side a winner by not giving the ball back to Patrick Mahomes. Multiple times I've seen him do it. All I'm saying is these are the things that I look at when I'm preparing to call a game, that I'm noting who the good play callers are and who are the guys who are really good on defense at stopping plays. But I'm going to tell you right now, in the NFL, the people who call plays, the coordinators, they're really smart guys. And trust me when I tell you, they have a lot of information at their disposal that there's not one of us that can sit on a sofa and sit and think that we can call the game better than an NFL coach.
You're right about that, Solly. No question. The Bengals offense last year, you mentioned, I mean, they could score points now. 7 times they scored 33 or more points. 7 games.
That's right.
And they went 3-4.
That's right.
You got to figure, you got to win 5 of those,
Yeah.
So offensively, they had their moments. They had some really good moments. They had a lot of good moments, really. And defensively, they had some good moments as well, but maybe not as many. What do you think it's going to take defensively, Solly? What needs to happen defensively to get that group more toward the middle of the pack rather than the lower third of the pack?
You need better production out of some really highly drafted players. So here's what you got to look at in the NFL each year in the draft. If you just took the time to study the top 100 players in each draft, you'd be doing great, because those are your first 3 rounds. So those are the players. Those are where your starters come from. Those are where and so now think about what the Bengals have done the last 3 years. You're talking Dax Hill. You're talking Cam Taylor-Britt. You're talking DJ Turner. You're talking Jordan Battle. You're talking Myles Murphy. So you've got a lot of players on the defensive side of the ball who have been highly drafted.
Yeah.
Who I think are really good players, by the way. I wouldn't label any of those guys I just mentioned a bust. Not one of them.
Yeah.
Because we've seen, like Cam Taylor-Britt, we've seen how good this guy can be. I think he's a really good player. What you need is greater consistency. And what you need from those players I name is that now going into year 2 and 3 and 4, consistency at a higher level of production. Because if you do get that, it's going to be one really good defense. And I think Al Golden is going to give them a game plan that simplifies things, that allow them to play fast and to really bring their talents to the forefront. I really do. I think he's going to dumb it down. I don't want to say It's not going to be complex and it's going to be simple, but I think it'll be at a level where they can operate and play very fast.
I agree with you, Solly. I mean, it's not as simple as keep it simple, stupid. But I remember a coach that I had back in the day at my collegiate level was like, what we got to do with you guys as a group. You got some guys in here that can handle it at a higher level than others. But you guys that can't handle it at that high level, you're making all of us keep it simple, stupid. Because you're stupid.
It's the KISS method. It's the KISS method. KISS.
Exactly.
Keep it simple, stupid.
No doubt. I'm looking forward to seeing what they get done this season, Solly. I mean, I think it's an exciting football team. The changes they made in the coaching staff, the new roster construction that's going on in all forms, in unrestricted free agency, the draft, college free agents. It's going to be exciting to watch this football team. I can't wait. And I know you as a former player feel the same way.
I really do. I think, I think every year this is the kind of team. They have the quarterback, obviously, and the players around them on offense. I think our offensive line, is much better than what we've seen over the last few years. I think Coach Peters is doing a wonderful job with that group.
No doubt.
So I just don't have any concerns over there. I mean, got to keep those fingers crossed that we stay healthy, because if we do, we're going to put up a lot of points on offense. Defensively, it's about, I don't even think you got to be top 10. You just be around the middle of the pack and take the football away. And that, to me, comes with effort and energy. If you fly around, if you hit and you hustle and you tackle, the ball's coming out, Dave. And that means now you got to make a few plays, right?
Yep.
But to me, defense is not about how many plays you make. It's about just don't give up big plays. Make them keep snapping it. Don't give up big plays. Tackle. When you get a chance to get a guy on the ground, get him on the ground. Yep. Don't let them throw the ball over your head. Don't give up big plays. If you don't give up the big plays, you are going to win on defense.
Yep.
If there's too many offenses, they're not patient enough to just, be methodical and go down the field and get a 1-yard run for a touchdown. No, They get greedy. They're going to throw it up for grabs. You got to be there when they do.
And finally, Solly, I appreciate all the time you've given us. You're more than generous at all times with your time, and you are a football savant, my man. But I'm looking at the interior, the middle of the offensive formation, the center and guards, and defensively, defensive tackles, middle linebackers, inside backers, and safeties. If they can get stronger up the middle of the football field, on both sides of it, man, if the guards play better, which I think they will. I think they've got personnel additions that roster construction is going to be really good there. I mean, firm the pocket up. Give Joe Burrow space. Give Joe Burrow time. He will kill you. He will pick you apart. And then on the other side of it, defensively, man, if they can just, firm up the middle of the football field, not let them just straight line track meet up and down the football field. I think if they get the middle of the football field take care of Solly, I think it could be a special group, man.
Yeah, I think the offensive line will be there. And they know Joe likes to step up in the pocket. I mean, this is textbook stuff. This guy is that good. He knows you got to press the line of scrimmage when you're in the pocket, and good things happen. But that means you need that protection. That wall has to be sound. Defensively, you can't let people run up the middle on you. You can't be soft there. And then you got to tackle at the second level of the defense. Look, man, Derrick Henry's in this division. If you have any apprehension about tackling him in space, stay home.
True.
Don't even show up.
Right on.
Just stay home, because he's coming. And if I was a safety or a linebacker in this division, and look, Quinshon Judkins, the rookie now for Cleveland, this kid is going to kind of remind you of a Nick Chubb. We already know Pittsburgh Steelers got running backs, and the Ravens, you got to be able to tackle.
Yeah.
You better get ready for a physical season, because just with inside of your division, if you had to play Derrick Henry twice, man, you better look forward to it. I'm just telling you, because it's going to be a long day at the ballpark if you're not enthusiastic about the physicality that comes with playing the Baltimore Ravens, Because if you can't stop them from running the football, you're not going to beat them. You're not going to beat them. We scored, 30-plus points in 2 games against them last year and lost both games.
Yeah.
Because why? Couldn't stop the run. Couldn't stop them from running the football on us. And that is an area defensively where you absolutely have to improve.
And I like what you said, Solly. Final comment. I promise. Play with an enthusiasm to tackle in the AFC North. You got to. You have to be enthusiastic tacklers, man. I mean, in the AFC North, if you win the AFC North, man, you've been prepped throughout the course of the year for the playoffs. And have success in the playoffs. And I think the Bengals can win the AFC North, Solly. I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to it, my man.
You remember in the days of the SWAT team, man, we'd be flying around, jumping around it. If we made a play on the ball, right? You know how you make a play. That's today's NFL. If you make a play on the ball, defensive backs jumping up and down, high-fiving. We need to start jumping up and down when somebody makes a tackle and get somebody on the ground short of the first down marker.
Bingo.
You should be just as excited about an open field one-on-one tackle, jumping up. I didn't need any help. I take care of my own business. You ought to be that excited when you make an open field tackle in this league.
That's what made you a great player, Solly. You were excited about the physicality, and you were a great one-on-one tackler, my man.
Thank you.
Did a lot of things really well for the Cincinnati Bengals and a tremendous football mind. Dick LeBeau said, "That's my guy. That's my guy in the SWAT team. He's going to be my communicator. I'm going to voice some signals into him through the headsets, and Solly's going to take care of business out in that football field, move everybody around, get everybody ready to play. And I know my man Solly's going to make plays. Solly's going to be a leader. He's going to be a hitter. He's going to be making plays.
He couldn't miss tackles, I can tell you that. He'd do this. You have a seat over here. Like, come here.
Oh, man. Solly, you're a great player, man. You had a great career. You're a phenomenal Cincinnati Bengal, and can't thank you enough for your time, my man.
Thank you, Dave. Enjoyed every bit of it, my friend. Thank you for allowing me to go down memory lane a little bit. All the best to you, my friend.
It was awesome. It was totally awesome, my man.
Great. Bye-bye.
Take care, Solly.
Okay.
Dave Lapham here. While games are over for the season, there's no off-season for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham or First Star Logistics. First Star Logistics gave away great prizes during the season, which will continue with exclusive content in the First Star Media Group YouTube channel. So please, do me a favor. Subscribe to In the Trenches, hit the like button, and visit the First Star Media Group YouTube channel for exclusive content and special giveaways.